Did the rich really not pay taxes? There's this really odd misconception that somehow the wealthiest people in our country do not pay any taxes, and nothing could be further from the truth. In reality, we have a progressive tax system in the US. What this means is that basically, as you progress through certain income levels, you pay a higher percentage on your earnings. And so, what a lot of people don't understand for some reason is they believe that there's this misnomer that the rich don't pay taxes. But in reality, that's just not the case. And let's support it with facts because I like facts. So, if you're an individual who earns more than $625,000 annually, you're going to be in the top tax bracket, which is currently 37%. What that means is that up to a certain point, you're going to run through all 7 tax brackets, and every dollar you make over $626,000 is going to be taxed at 37%. And that's just at the federal level. That's not considering the state where you live or the locale where you live. So you can see why that's a pretty big sum of money. If you're married, it gets even worse because we do have an additional a regressive system with married couples. So if you're a married couple who earns more than $750,000 annually, you're already in that 37% tax bracket. So for the top couple tax brackets in the US, we actually have a marriage penalty that comes back in. So if you're a high earning couple and you're over 750, then you're actually going to end up paying more than if you were two singles. So again, a lot of money. Anything over that 750 is all going to be taxed at 37%. That's just on the federal. That's before we hit state, before we hit local, all the things like that. So, that's just the reality of how the tax bracket works. In addition, if we look at the total taxes that are collected in the US and kind of look at all of the taxes that are collected across the entire United States for the IRS, how much taxes of the total bucket collected are being paid by certain individuals. Well, the top 1% of earners in the US actually account for 40% of the total taxes that are collected in the United States. That's right. The top 1% pay 40% of the total taxes collected. Now, you might be okay with that, but it's certainly not a statistic that tells you that the wealthiest individuals in the US are not paying their fair share. In reality, they're paying 40% of the total tax burden of the US. In addition, the top 10% of earners in the US actually pay 72% of the total taxes that are collected in the US. So again, if you're a higher earner and you're earning in the top 10% of earners in the US, you're also paying in to the total bucket, which is 72% of those taxes paid by the top 10% of earners. So again, sounds like a pretty big skew. For the people at the other end of the spectrum, the bottom 50% of taxpayers in the United States actually account for only 3% of the total federal taxes that are collected. So again, you can kind of see where the bottom 50% are only paying 3% into the total bucket, and the top 10% are paying 72%. And then the rest of it kind of right in the middle. So why do I say all this? Well, I think that we have to move away from the idea that the wealthy don't pay taxes. Frankly, it's just false. They clearly do, and this is supported by lots of statistics that are very readily available. So this isn't like something I just made up. So it's important to understand that if you are somebody who is earning an amount of money that is over that top 50%, but definitely in that top 10% of earners, there is a reason why you feel like your taxes are such a big part of your expenses every year, every month, depending on how you earn it. What is also true is that individuals who own businesses or invest in capital or real estate and things like that have more availability to certain tax deductions than individuals who are traditionally employed from a job. And that's, again, a function of how the tax code has been written and what the available deductions are there, for those individuals. But the majority of people that are over that top, those top brackets, they're really paying a pretty high burden of taxes. So I'd love to know what you think. Does this reality makes sense to you, are you still mad about it? That's okay if you are, but this is the reality of the tax system in our U.S. government. So I think it's important to sort of lay to rest anybody who argues and yells that the rich don't pay taxes, because the reality is it's just not true.